Lovely to be here. So, the last few years have been pretty crazy when it comes to AI and infrastructure build-out. We've seen $1 trillion worth of AI infrastructure deals signed by OpenAI alone, $500 billion worth of Stargate projects, $300 billion worth of deals with Oracle, NVIDIA, AMD, and others. And we're generally, across the globe, starting to run out of energy to build out more AI data centers. In the EU, we've recently had billions of dollars worth of deals with CoreWeave, Nscale, Nebius. Most of them have been driven by AI hyperscalers or AI labs. The European Commission has recently kind of set a project for $20 billion worth of AI gigafactories to be built out. So we're building out AI infrastructure at a massive scale. I'm normally a partner with ByFounders, an early-stage VC, but at the moment I'm chief of staff with Verda, which is an AI cloud company. Aura, you've been thinking a lot about this. Can you please tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you think about EU's competitiveness in AI is looking like at the moment?
Will do. My God, I told my assistants that I'm happy if there are 3 people in the audience, because when we talk about the EU, normally people are just as far as possible. So I'm really happy that you are here, because we need all of you for the future of the EU and AI in Europe. So my name is Aura Salla. I'm a member of the European Parliament. I have a background, I would say it's mixed. So I used to work for Mark Zuckerberg in Facebook. Company turned out to be Meta before I left it. And then I was in the European Commission, so with the civil servants for 6 years, when we started to build this mayhem of digital regulation in the EU. Since that, I came back to Helsinki for a year. Then I escaped this weather in November and went to the European Parliament in Brussels, where I'm based. And there I'm focusing on technology and also defense nowadays, because as you know, there is war in Europe. So we need high tech also for defense.
And so back to the question, what do you think about EU's kind of positioning right now in AI? Are we building enough infrastructure? Are we set up to actually succeed?
Putin said 10 years ago that who will win the race on AI will win the race on globe. And that's still the truth, I would say. Coming from a big tech world, I'd say that EU lost this game like 10 years ago, when we started to think regulation as the best export product from the EU. So I completely disagree with Anu Bradford there that, you know, we should have regulation, 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 and then we brag about it, then that's the best thing that comes from the EU. Don't get me wrong, I think that your personal data should be secured, right? We have the GDPR, so you can click your cookies like until the end, so you feel very safe in the EU. However, our companies need data, as you know it very well. It's data, data, data. I'm speaking about metadata, behavioral data, to train our AI models. Nowadays, it's US companies who do that. They come to the EU, they are collecting our data for free, and then they export it to Silicon Valley, and they develop their services there. And now they are saying, don't worry, Aura, we are building data centers to Finland. Oh, thank you. So you will have a storage room with our cheap electricity in Finland, so we are super happy. But still, you collect the data, you move it to the US, and there you develop actually your services, right? Same thing with Chinese companies. TikTok, Huawei, they come here, you open your TikTok application, and you start giving data for free for communist authoritarian regime who helps Putin win the war in Ukraine. That's what we are doing with your TikTok. I would never, ever open that app, right? So Europeans, we need to build our own tech sovereignty, meaning that we need our tech companies to stay here. And to answer your question, when you ask from politicians, this is what you are getting. The problem is regulation, 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 because you have layered regulation. GDPR, Data Act, Data Governance Act, DSA, DMA, AI Act, you name it. You have so many regulations that good luck being a startup or mid-cap in the EU and trying to build up your company here. I would never know how to navigate this regulatory system. Second thing, you don't have an internal market. You still face 27 different regulations in different member states. Good luck with that. Then third thing is that then you build a company here. You will sell it to the US. You will take the money, and in Finland you will have a nice cottage by the lake, and then you settle down. Where is the hungerness? Where is the ambition, in Europe that you build a company, you sell it, you build a new company, you sell it. That's what is happening in the US, but it's not happening in the EU. And that worries me a lot. And then it's talent. We have plenty of talent. I was leading the office for Meta in Brussels, so I had like 17 nationalities. But people are really settled where they actually grew up. You just told me that you want to go back to Sweden, for example. 4% of Europeans live and work in another country than where they are from. It's super low, like the level that people are actually going to another country. So I think those are the biggest problems. And then the last part is that we are lacking of risk financing, guys. We are lacking of risk financing. We are still leaning towards bank loans in the EU. We have, look at this, what is happening around you. We have venture capital, but it's not enough. You need 10 to 15 years risk financing, these kind of angel investors that you have in the US. You take your company, you go to the US, you enter from Delaware, right? You have the whole market, and then you have angel investors that you can actually build your company, scale it up, and that's what is missing in the EU.
I agree. You touched on sovereign AI, right? So what does it's been a big buzzword recently. What does sovereign AI actually kind of mean in the context of the EU? Does it mean that there's going to be, each country wants to have the data and the services and the AI running in data centers within their own country? So we need like 27 different data centers for every company. And is it enough that the company resides in the EU and is owned mostly by EU? Or is it also fine if there's, for example, American investors on the cap table, as you suggested? What does it mean? What does it look like to be truly sovereign?
What it means is that, I have told this many times now, we will thank Microsoft one day that they actually made us build tech sovereignty in the EU. Why? Because of the kill switch. What did Microsoft do? They banned access of the International Criminal Court prosecutor to his emails because of a political decision, because of politics in Israel, in Palestine. That is a huge thing. Do you see that on the news enough? No, you don't. Think about, we all Europeans, EU level, Finnish government, Irish government, German government, we all use Microsoft. US company. That's critical infrastructure. You have a software, cyber, cloud there. And then when I'm telling that, hey, you need to choose European companies, oh, Aura, it is super expensive. And it's super difficult to find cloud, cyber, and software in one package. Microsoft is offering that. But for example, this year, Microsoft is increasing their prices 20 to 30% when it comes to public sector in Finland. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. So I think that we need to have public procurement in the EU saying that you need to put European companies first when you buy critical infrastructure. And here I mean software, cyber, and cloud. I know that you have these solutions. You have these solutions. But we need to also enable that. And this requires a little bit more stick than carrots right now. And let me also address that I changed my mind completely. I used to work in an American company, and I was advocating for this transatlantic data ecosystem, like heavily, because I know that in the EU we have lost this game. We don't have enough data. We need these American companies, right? But the problem for me is that now with Trump's second administration and governance, they don't help us in Ukraine. They are making us super bad trade deals. Why do we advocate still this data, like a transatlantic system together with the US? We shouldn't. We should build our own tech and data economy in the EU, and then we would have the reciprocity and do trade with the US. But now we are not in the same level.
Yes, I agree fully. So obviously, most of the people in the audience are from kind of startup land, and startup land doesn't tend to pay as much attention to the EU as maybe they should, given how impactful it is. So I think today there was a release of a digital omnibus package. Maybe you could talk about how that is actually affecting this specific issue, and maybe get the startups up to speed on what it means for them.
Absolutely. I come from a company where I can tell you that the CEO couldn't care less about the EU. It was really difficult to try to convince Zuckerberg to come to Brussels and talk with the EU leaders. And at the same time, he always asked me, like, you know, why are you guys doing this? You are harming your own companies. I mean, for Meta, Google, Amazon, Apple, it might be cost of doing business to try to navigate this jungle of regulation in the EU. But with companies here in the EU, I'm so sorry. It is super difficult to understand what the AI Act actually means. 300 pages of regulation, and not even the best lawyers can read that. So there are a couple of us who have been really fighting to deregulate in the EU, but it is difficult when the message doesn't come from you guys. Please contact us, make a big public fuss around it, that it is super difficult to understand if you develop your AI services when you will be sanctioned by the EU. And this should not happen. I don't think that our companies should be worried about that. So GDPR, today at 12, the Commission is announcing a program on deregulation. They will open maybe GDPR. Now it's really technical, but maybe some of you know Articles 4, 6, and 9. Hugely important for startups who are building anything with the AI, because it comes back to what is personal data and what is anonymous data that you can actually use to train your technologies. Because according to the GDPR, basically everything can be tracked back to person right now. So it is difficult to actually train these models in the EU. So that will come today at 12. They will maybe touch point on AI Act. Will we have a little bit more time to enforce it? Cybersecurity, there might be something. But then I need your voices together with me that we actually make it happen, that we will deregulate and enable our companies to grow in this market.
So this kind of deregulation angle, and obviously what we spoke about before, kind of sovereign AI, in some sense, you could think of them almost as clashing a little bit, right? Because sovereign AI is obviously really good in theory, but at the moment, maybe people are not taking it seriously enough and actually using it, right? So to what extent do we kind of need to force both institutions and the companies in the EU to actually take this seriously, right? I think most people here are either using on Microsoft Suite or maybe Google Meet, all this kind of stuff. It's very convenient, right? Do we need to kind of force banks or institutions to basically switch over to European alternatives? And if so, how do we ensure that we have European alternatives?
It's a combination of everything that I'm saying, that we need to deregulate, we need to open the market, and also your companies, you need to have access to European market for once. One business ID, and you know that you can exchange also information and data freely in the EU. That's hugely important. And then it's in the competence of member states, of course, labor law, taxation, insolvency laws. So it's not an easy fix. It will take time. But I would say that our public sector needs to start buying European right now. That's the first step. We need to do that. Yes, it might be costly, but it is also about defense, it's about security, and that's something that is doable. Make offers to public sector if you have a software company, if you have a cloud company, if you have a cyber company, because EU Commission and institutions are now actually doing public procurement based on European companies. That's a great and huge opportunity, and I know that you have solutions. And then the second thing is that people need to be aware when you use TikTok or when you use Microsoft, that it's always in the hands of US authorities or Chinese authorities in the end. They always will have access to your data. If you're fine by that, okay, but you need to be aware of that, I would say.
Switching gears a little bit, I'm obviously working for Verde at the moment, and we're building our data centers. And we are already starting to see a trend that's happened in the US a few years earlier. So in the US, we're starting to run out of energy. The data center providers that are building out there are starting to switch to kind of gas turbines to power their data centers. A lot of people are starting to build out things in the Middle East, also powered by kind of gas. We're like a couple of years behind in this trend, but we're already starting to see energy being limited in like France and parts of Germany. What role should the EU play in making sure we kind of build out the energy generation capacity that we're going to need for AI over the next decade?
Super important for any tech company to have energy, right? I have a military background. I used to be in the Finnish Air Force for a year and Navy for half a year, and I was in the Special Forces. And I come from southeast Finland, so 20 kilometers from a Russian border. So in my mind, I have always thought this from the angle of security and this comprehensive security approach that we have in Finland. And this is something that I try to always advocate also in Brussels or whenever I go to the United States. And it all comes back to energy, because you need energy to actually build any of these companies. If you want to have a defense forces, anything, it comes back to energy. It's about having a sustainable energy mix. In Finland, we invested heavily to nuclear power, as you know. So we have nuclear power, then we have renewables, and we don't depend on Russian fossil fuels. That's a huge thing, and it is different here in Finland than in many European countries. When I argue this in Germany or in France, they are in a huge trouble now because they don't have nuclear power, they don't have enough sustainable energy, and we need to cut any ties with Russia and Russian fossil fuels right now, right today, when we are taking seriously defending Ukraine. So I would say it needs to be technology neutral. It needs to combine nuclear and renewables, and it cannot combine any fossil fuels from Russia.
So I'm in general a huge fan of the EU and the project that we're trying to build here, kind of uniting a bunch of different, very disparate nations. But at the moment, I would say that the kind of prevalent attitude in tech, especially if you look at Twitter, is an incredible pessimism around what the EU is trying to do. It's like, bogging down the startups and regulation, not growing fast enough, not enough funding, all this kind of thing. I generally agree that this is a problem, right? But I also think there are advantages that the EU has. Can you give that kind of bull case of what the EU could be and what we could be doing for the tech community? What are our core advantages that we should be enabling?
Absolutely. But first, I will ask, you are still using Twitter?
I am, yes. It's my guilty pleasure.
I'm just saying that Elon Musk is helping far right in the EU, and it's not advocating Ukraine to win. Just saying
I agree.
Awareness, awareness, awareness. If you're fine with that, keep using your X. I deleted it. So I used to be a huge fan of EU. Like literally, I was a federalist when I grew up because I come from southeast of Finland, and I joined my party because it was the most pro-EU party in 1998. Yes, I know I'm old. And then I thought that, okay, we need to be part of the EU and we need to be in NATO. Those were the two things that I advocated throughout my 20s, my 30s. And we have both of these. And I thought, I'm a huge federalist. I believe in the EU. And then I went into the system of the EU. I worked 6 years in the Commission, and I try not to be too skeptic. But I am quite skeptic, to be honest. As you know, in the EU, you have 44,000 civil servants. 33,000 out of those are in the Commission. And Commission is like these ministries we have in different member states. They are civil servants. The Ursula von der Leyen, Henna Virkkunen, Séjourné from France, they are all civil servants. But they are the ones who write the laws at the beginning, like the proposals. And I was sitting there like 2014 in the Commission, and in the room there were like a bunch of, sorry, I don't have anything against older male civil servants, but there were like 30, 40 male civil servants, and they were like, we need to regulate these Facebook and Twitter. I have never used these applications, but I think we need to regulate them. I'm like, my God, these are the ones who will actually write the tech regulation. They have never used these apps. They have been civil servants in the Commission in Brussels for 30 years. What will happen? Well, you see what happened. Mayhem of regulation that doesn't take into account business models, that doesn't take into account how these apps actually work. So here we are. So just saying how the EU is built, it's not really thought through. It's thought through in that sense that then you have these civil servants, and then you have the lawmakers, European Parliament, that you voted to Brussels, and then you have member states, so ministers you voted in Sweden, in Finland, in Ireland, and so on. And these are the ones who actually then make the laws. But they are so far away that I feel like people really don't know who to contact, how this actually works, what is coming out there. So it is a Christmas tree, and it's really difficult to understand. Normally, when something already comes out and it's like already bad regulation, then people wake up like, my God, you are regulating my tech or my the GDPR where I'm clicking. So that being said, how I would do it is that, now EU has most power in agriculture, fisheries, and trade. Those are the three things that are really in the core of the EU. And then people ask, why are you not doing more in Ukraine? Why are you not doing more in Middle East? Because EU doesn't have competence there. Why? Because in the democratic system, people didn't want to give power to EU in foreign policy or in defense. Two areas where any MEP, any commissioner, any EU politicians are trying to give you big speeches about defense or foreign policy. EU doesn't have a power there. But on tech and energy, the thing is that single market is really in the core of the EU, and there EU is grabbing all possible power. So wherever they see a problem or risk, they regulate. There is a risk, let's regulate. There is always an answer from the EU. Let's regulate, let's build a new agency with a bunch of civil servants, or let's give grants. Grants that doesn't really get you anywhere because it's too small, but we did something. We did something, subsidies. So that's why you can see that I'm becoming really skeptical. How I would change the EU is that I would focus on big things that actually matter to the whole continent. I would open the single market. I would make sure that our startups and mid-caps and scale-ups could do their business everywhere like this, like in the United States. I would open the stock market to everyone in the EU, right? I would make risk financing really flow freely in the EU. I would open pension fund financing for our startups and scale-ups much, much more. So these things that actually matter, energy policy, as you say, I would give more power to the EU. On defense, I would give more power to the EU. Because when you talk about, for example, developing these new drones and drone technology, why Ukraine is so far ahead in this area? Because Silicon Valley companies actually help them. They have access, straight access to Silicon Valley. These companies help them to develop their drone technology. That's how you make it happen. They are not part of the EU regulation. They can do it freely. Good luck coming to the EU, and you have a bunch of regulation that limits you when you do a high-tech development work. So that's how I would change the EU. I would maybe get rid of half of the MEPs in Brussels. Sorry, my colleagues. But it is important that also your MEP is ambitious and focuses on things that you care about. So make sure when you vote that you actually have a person who is passionate about things that you care about. That's super important. And you should care about politics. Like I try to convince Mark always, you need to care about the politics, because it's not only that you can kill the bill, to throw a bunch of money and kill the bill and make a regulation not happen. You actually need to influence these people who work in politics. They might be boring, yes. They might speak a different language than you do, but they are the ones who make your life a living hell if they regulate something that where you are trying to innovate.
So, I guess final question on that specifically. I'm representing a startup here. Most of the audience is also representing startups. How do we get Brussels to understand what it's like to build a startup and what it is that we need? How do we engage? You're convinced, you're here speaking with us, right? How do we convince the rest of Brussels?
I remember when we have been collaborating with Slush a lot in my party, and of course when I was still in the private sector, and people always told me that we don't want to see politicians in Slush, we don't want to see policy people in Slush. We want to really be just, innovative and, really ambitious. And I was like, guys, yeah, but those people are the ones who enable you the market, or they don't enable you the market. So you need to actually have this conversation with boring policymakers and politicians. What I did actually, I know who is the CEO, the fantastic CEO of Slush. I invited her to Brussels with a bunch of social media influencers, and I showed them around how it's actually done, how laws are actually done in the EU. It's something super concrete. So I invite you to come to Brussels, come to Strasbourg, and actually see how these laws are made for you, or they are not made for you. And vice versa. Ask us to come to your company. That's why I'm here today, because I actually want to meet people. I want to understand where technology is going. And we need to have this exchange of view much, much more, so it comes much more concrete. And I think it also opened Aino's eyes in that sense that, okay, these people are actually thinking of this regulation that doesn't make any sense. So no matter what the Commission is saying to you, there is upcoming regulation on digital fairness. They will regulate something on dark patterns, for example, minors. There is upcoming regulation on digital networks. Be aware that it's coming. Fair share conversation is back. So I think we need much more of this dialect between us.
Lovely. So in short, go to Brussels. It's a beautiful city. I highly recommend it. Thank you so much for this discussion, Aura. Thank you for coming.
Thanks so much.